Hello friends, good day. Welcome to Dr. Mohanty's Modeling and Simulation channel. Today we will be talking about the most important nutrient element, that is nitrogen. How nitrogen is helpful for plant growth and development, what roles does it play, and what kind of nutrition it provides to the plant, what are the sources of availability of nitrogen in soils, because as you know, soil is the source of many essential plant nutrients and nitrogen is one of them. And plants get nitrogen from soil through the process of mineralization. That means whatever organic matter is there, they get mineralized and nitrogen is released through the microbes interaction, and they are available to the plants. But most of the nitrogen, as you know, they are in organic form. You may say that it's more than 95%, but when you talk about the availability of nitrogen to the soil, so soil cannot provide the amount of nitrogen that is required by the crop. So we go for external sources of nitrogen application. That means we go for either from the fertilizer and manures. From fertilizers, essentially what are those fertilizers, just like your urea, then DAP. But from the manures, you get from your farmyard manure, compost, vermicompost. But also some parts of the plant residues, they also having some amount of nitrogen present in them. So I'll show you live demonstration how important is nitrogen for plant growth and development. We are in a field where we have applied nitrogen in excess as well as nitrogen optimum. You can see a wheat crop where you have applied more than 50% of nitrogen of the recommended dose. You can see still the plant growth and development is too good. But can you go for that much nitrogen application for essential, for crop, good crop and yield or economic yield? Sometimes not, because when you add excess amount of nitrogen and the plant cannot take, that makes either the plant is too green to attract different disease and pest, or sometimes they become succulent and they may fall because nitrogen may not provide the support that the plant requires. It is some other elements like potassium that gives the strength to the crop plant. So you'll see that when you have optimum amount of nitrogen added to the soil in addition to other essential plant nutrients like phosphorus and potassium and micronutrients, you always get a good crop growth. But when you don't apply much of the nitrogen as required by the crop, and you'll see that in this wheat crop we have added less than if you come and see this, less than the optimum, half of the optimum dose. But here we have applied 50% of the recommended dose of nitrogen, and you can see and compare these two crops where you have added 100% of nitrogen as recommended by the government agency or by the university, and you can see 50% of that, and you can see the crop growth is also reduced to a larger extent. And in this experiment, I would say that in this crop we have added adequate amount of phosphorus and potassium. Now the question comes, when you have added other nutrients in adequate amount, is it possible that plant growth will be very good? Or when you are not adding other nutrients and you are adding nitrogen, what would be the growth? So in these two cases, I'll show one example where we have added no nitrogen but adequate amount of phosphorus and potassium, and what kind of growth actually we obtained. So that shows that in spite of addition of other nutrient elements like potassium, phosphorus, and without addition of nitrogen, the crop growth is suddenly, you will see that it's stunted, it is very poor, and there is not enough. You'll see that I'll show you in this experiment. Please follow me, and I'll show you. You can see this. In this experiment, actually, we have added adequate amount of, you can see that phosphorus and potassium. It's been so many years now, 7-8 years, and see that kind of crop growth and what is the stunted growth. So this shows that how much important is nitrogen in spite of addition of other nutrient elements like phosphorus and potassium. because nitrogen, as you know, is part of chlorophyll. And this is also, helps in process of photosynthesis, gives enough biomass production. Side by side, also it provides energy to the plants. When you are not adding adequate amount of nitrogen, in spite of adding phosphorus and potassium, and you see that, so whatever the energy the plant requires in different plant parts, it may not provide for optimizing the crop yield. That's the reason you will see that in a cereal crop like wheat, where you need nitrogen, in spite of addition of phosphorus and potassium, we are not getting good yield. But when we have added nitrogen along with, even if it is 50% of the recommended dose, still we got good yield, though it is not as good as or as compared to your the plots where it received enough nitrogen or recommended dose of nitrogen. And we'll see that another case of residue addition. When you talk about conservation agriculture or conservation tillage where you are adding residues, so these residues plays important role because they contain certain amount of nitrogen. Suppose if I say this is a maize residue which contains 0.05% nitrogen, and you continuously adding in a cropping system around 10 tons, that means you are adding 10 tons per hectare, you are adding 5 kg of nitrogen, and it continues for so many years, and it keep on adding more and more nitrogen to the soil, and it will show the residual effect. And not only it provides nitrogen in long term, which can reduce the application of nitrogen to some extent. Maybe after certain years it may reduce 25% of applied nitrogen, but apart from that it provides all other physical, chemical and biological properties improvement that helps in increasing crop yield. So and it is not restricted to cereals. Sometimes you feel that in legumes also they also respond to some extent to nitrogen application. We have seen here also is a field crop is gram or chickpea. You see that where we have not added any nitrogen, still the crop is good, but it is it's not as good as where we have added nitrogen. This crop is having phosphorus, potassium in adequate amount, but nitrogen is 0, means we have not added any nitrogen for the last 7-8 years. But here and other plots, you'll see that we have added 50% of the recommended dose of nitrogen and 150%, and we found that this crop is also responding to the nitrogen to some extent. That means how much nitrogen is important not only in cereals, it is also important in legumes. That's why you always say that you give the booster dose for nitrogen to the crops, so that initial growth and development of the legumes will be better. After that, it starts fixing its own nitrogen. We call it biological nitrogen fixation. This is one example. Because we have added phosphorus, this also gives better root growth, and that also helps in nodulation, and it gives good crop growth. And even if when the crop starts fixing its nitrogen and presence of phosphorus, it gives good growth as compared to the cereal I have shown you other side. So friends, thank you for watching. Hope this information and its great demonstration would help you to understand how much important nitrogen for plant growth and development, as well as how much important nitrogen in context of conservation agriculture. We are adding enough residues, whether it is rice system, maize system or maize chickpea system. So importance of residue also very much required. We want to understand that. So thank you for watching my channel, and have a great day.